this was the person who thought of this race and instituted this race and ran this race for a long, long time. A race that a lot of us now just sort of take for granted. It's, you know, it's the day before Easter every year, and you know, we give little thought to how or why it began. But this is a man who helped start a running movement here back in the 70s in New Orleans. So Mac was here yesterday. Some of you weren't here yesterday and didn't have the opportunity to hear him talk about how and why the race got started, and along with his description of how everything got going, we've got some great old pictures, and you may look around you and see some of these great old faces that looked a little younger 38 years ago or so. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Mac here, and he's going to kind of go through what his thought process was in how and why he started the Crescent City Classic.
Jenny, thank you very much. One of the great pleasures of being here, of course, is to get to reconnect with you. You've been such a big help, not only for me, but for thousands of runners with your training guide, and I can assure you that a lot of them wouldn't have made it through without your help. I cannot believe 38 years ago. I mean, to me, that's the blink of an eye, and I hadn't really thought much about the Crescent City Classic other than just wishing it well and much success going forward. But my life went in a different direction when I sold the race after running it for 18 years. But when I started going back through the archives and looking at all of the old newspaper articles and pictures and everything, it really tugged at my heartstrings, because that was a very special time for me. I think it was a very special time for the city of New Orleans, and it certainly, I think, changed the face of middle distance running, road running in America with the quality athletes that we were able to bring into New Orleans. I came down here in 1977 from Atlanta. I had bought a shoe outlet franchise named Fidipodes, and the Crescent City Classic primarily was thought of as a vehicle to drive runners into my store to buy our shoes and other wear, and to also, you know, give us an opportunity to spread our name in the community. But while I was in Atlanta and at graduate school, I had to do a marketing paper, and the paper that I chose was creating a fictitious road race, because I'd become so enamored with the Peachtree Road Race in Atlanta, which had started and had just become unbelievably successful. So when I got to New Orleans, I thought back about that paper, and I noticed that we did not have a major participatory sporting event. The one thing that ran, the one common thread that ran through all of those big races throughout America was that the daily newspaper was the title sponsor. And the first year I was very lucky. We got Hibernia Bank to put up $40,000 in 1979. And a contact of mine, Jeff Galloway, who I bought the franchise to Fidipodes from, was a friend of Frank Shorter and had run with Frank on the Florida Track Club, and also was an Olympian in 1972 at the tragic Munich Olympics. So I asked Frank if he would use his influence and see if we could invite and get Frank Shorter to come down here, and we could build our promotional campaign around it. And Frank did. And Frank, of course, won the race. We had Frank and a lot of Fidipodes runners, Lee Fiddler, Benji Durden, Kent McDonald, a local runner, was probably the best runner that I remember New Orleans producing. And it was a very successful race. There were 900 of us. Everybody stayed at my house at the French Quarter. We got up and walked to Jackson Square, ran the race, had a good time there, caught the streetcar back to the quarter, went back to the house, had a few beers. Frank went on a 20-mile run that afternoon after winning the race. And so it was a very good start, but the one thing missing was we didn't have a media sponsor. So I went to the Times-Picayune, and I told them what I was trying to do, and I would love to have them join us, and how important it was in creating a mega participatory event for them to be involved. And timing is everything in this world. Mr. Phelps looked at me and said, well, you know, we were just talking about doing a race ourselves. Hold on a minute and let me get the guy who's running the state's item to come up here and meet with us. And that was back in the time, I doubt if any of you all remember, but there were two newspapers that were owned by the same family. It was the state's item, the afternoon newspaper, and the Times-Picayune, the morning paper. The morning paper was by far the largest. Well, the guy that came up was named Charlie Ferguson, and he turned out to be an avid runner like I, and we settled on it. Yes, we're going to do it. They told me we can't give you any money, but we're going to guarantee you we'll get you the participants. Well, lo and behold, about 3 years later, the two papers merged and became the Times-Picayune State's Item, and Charlie Ferguson became editor of both of the newspapers. And the thing that made our race so successful at that time was that they gave us 40 full-page ads. Now think of that. That's before the internet, that's before the social media meccas and all of that. So if you had the major newspaper and they were spewing out promotions for you, you had to be pretty stupid not to be able to attract a big crowd. And the one thing that we didn't do was mess it up. But their caveat to us in sponsoring this race was that we want this to be a race that will draw national and international attention to our city, and one that we would cover even if we weren't the sponsor. So that's what we tried to do. And as I said, after Frank Shorter showed up and won the race for us, we were able then to really build a reputation as a race that was worthy of elite participation. And you'll see on the screen over here, the lady in the right is the only New Orleanian to actually have won a division of the Crescent City Classic. She was the first women's winner, and also the second lady that finished that day, very famous New Orleans family, Virginia Bestoff. So the first year was a mecca for female runners from New Orleans. And of course, not only were there serious runners, and I'm not saying Tutu wasn't a serious runner, but you see in the upper corner, I think that was the premiere of the Tutu and Tutu Man, which was a tradition that lasted for many, many years in New Orleans. He's a great guy and a lot of fun. In 1980, we wanted to maintain our reputation as a top flight race, and there's the old race course, of course, starting at Jackson Square and finishing in Audubon Park, which was really an easy, straight line course. I think there were maybe 3 turns in it, so it was a pretty fast course to begin with. And that was, I think, our second year. That was our first year advertisement over there on the right with a guy from Atlanta by the name of Lee Fiddler as our kind of poster boy. In 1980, we were very lucky to be able to build off of Frank Shorter, and we got Craig Virgin, who was the hot American runner, to come in to challenge Bill Rogers. And Bill Rogers, of course, was Boston Billy, was winning all the Boston marathons and was a great runner in and of itself. Craig Virgin went on to become an international champion, won the World Cross Country Championship, and was a very good friend of New Orleans and the Crescent City Classic. We actually did a television commercial for Hibernia Bank with Craig as a spokesman in Jackson Square. And you see Craig and Bill Rogers there together in 1981, and it was a great race and a lot of fun for us. But Rogers was a true gentleman. I think he came down and expected, didn't realize that Craig was coming, so it was kind of a shock for him, but he certainly did his PR duty and he ran as hard as he possibly could. So that was 1981. Patty Catalano had come down, and we had met her, and I don't even remember how, but she stayed at our house a lot, she and her husband Joe, and she came in and won the 1980 Crescent City Classic 34:48 and went on to become the favorite for the Boston Marathon, and unfortunately I believe a New Zealand lady by the name of Alison Rowe beat her fairly severely up there, and that was really, I hate to say the end of Patty's running career, but she's certainly something she didn't recover from, because she was a Bostonian and she had been on USA Today and all of that. And when she wasn't able to win the race, it really took a devastating toll on her. 1982, and you all, I'm sure, may recognize Jenny Peters. Jenny Peters with Victory Sports in Baton Rouge. She was a great runner. She came down for a number of years and ran with the Crescent City Classic. I think always finished in the top 10 in the women's division. And the guy you see on the right over there with the beard was a gentleman by the name of Bill Davis. And Bill was the co-owner of the event, co-founder of the event with me for a number of years. He was a great friend. Nobody was more fun than Bill, I can assure you. If you've ever been to the Peachtree Road Race, we've got a lot of memories to talk about, because I'm sure Bill probably pops up in some of them. 1983 was another good year for us. We had set 2 world records with Michael Musioki in 81 and 82, I believe. And in 1983, Wendy Sly sets a world record in the Crescent City Classic. She was a great runner. She won the Classic twice. She also won the silver medal in the 1984 Olympic, not Olympic marathon, but the Olympic 3,000 meters. That was the one in which Mary Decker and Zola Budd had a run-in on the track, and both fell and missed the race. But Wendy finished second in that, came back and defended her title in 1985. 1984 is certainly a year that will be remembered by all of us who have kept up with track and field and road running over the years, because Mark Nino came in and ran 27:22, which was the fastest recorded time in the world and a world record. It was just unbelievable. Mary O'Connor from New Zealand was the women's champion that year, but Mark's record was just unbelievable. And in that race, 4 people went under the existing world record, and 5 people were under 28 minutes, which was a fantastic accomplishment. So that was a great deep field. 1985, Patty Harris produced 3 posters for us, 1983, 1984, and 1985, that were mega sellers for the Crescent City Classic. Certainly did a lot for our bottom line. And I understand the 1984 poster, which was of Jackson Square, was the largest selling poster at the 1984 World's Fair. But she was a good friend, also a very good runner, and just did tremendous work as an artist for the Classic. 1986, the Blues Brothers, and they're still running strong. That is unbelievable. Stand up. A great testament not only to the fun of the event, but the dedication that their runners have for the Crescent City Classic. So that is a great tradition in and of itself. 1987 also was an outstanding year for us, and there you see we moved up to the River Batcher. We had outgrown the front of Audubon Park and the old bandstand there, and moved up to the River Batcher, where we had a lot of open space there. We started doing corporate parties up there. We had corporate tents. We also put a big expo tent up there so that we could take the expo, which was at that time at the Hilton Hotel, and transfer the vendors that wanted to move up there and continue to sell their goods out at the Crescent City Classic after the race. And those were the days that we were giving away jambalaya. And I think Bert Grimion, who is our cook, set a Guinness Book World Record for the number of plates of jambalaya that he served in the morning. So fun times for all on the River Batcher. 1988, there you can see the old start of the event. That was approaching our high water mark. The high water mark in terms of participation in the Classic was 32,000. And I don't remember exactly when that came, but it was either 89 or 90. Maybe even 91, but 1988 was another race that was extremely successful because of the numbers of people that were participating, and the competition again was just unbelievable. from start to end. 1989, the first wedding we had at the Crescent City Classic, Paul Ford and Judy Alquin, was the first CCC wedding. Chuck George actually told me yesterday that they had planned on doing it the year before, but that one of their divorces did not come through, so they had to wait till the following year. But fortunately, we had good weather for them there, and again, a great time. But the thing that stuck out to me was, and I don't know if any of you all remember, but when I was growing up and I was in school, there was the big Cuban Missile Crisis, and everybody was scared to death about Russia dropping the A-bomb on us and all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of always held the Russians and the Soviet Union in awe. And in 1989, we got in contact with an expat that was living, expatriate, or whatever they call them these days, that was living in London, who had connections in the Soviet athletic departments with their Olympic committee, and agreed with them to be able to extract their Olympic athletes, 3 of them, to come run in the Crescent City Classic. This was the first time that the Soviets had allowed their Olympic caliber athletes to run in any event other than a championship, world championship, national championship, or Olympics. And so we were very lucky. We got Olga Bondarenko, who was the reigning 10,000 meter champion from Seoul. Her husband, Vladimir, was a member of the Valery Borzov world record 4x100 meter team from Moscow. And they're, of course, you can see on the left there, enjoying some Louisiana crawfish, some of our finest cuisine, and I don't remember what their reaction to it was, but I'm sure that they either had a cold beer or a glass of water pretty quickly after biting into the crawfish. We took them to Commander's Palace, and it was just amazing to see the awe in these people's face when they saw the amount of food and the quality and quantity of food that was available to them. We paid a substantial amount of money to get them to come over back in those days. And I can remember it had to be a cash deal, and I'm sitting out at the Spanish Plaza right by the Hilton with the Russians, with the KGB agent, and with the agent, and I'm counting out $30,000 in cash, because they wouldn't take a check, they wouldn't take a money order, they wanted $30,000 in American dollars. So I gave that to them, but then what the athletes really wanted were blue jeans, microwave ovens, and things like that. So of course we loaded them down with everything that we could come up with for their trip back to the Soviet Union, and I'm sure they were regarded as heroes when they got back. 1990, of course, there's an aerial view of the old starting line there at Jackson Square. This was on the left, Judy St. Hilaire, and Judy St. Hilaire was the female winner 5 years in a row. Certainly a record that hasn't been broken, and I doubt will be broken. She was very consistent. She was a strong runner. She was a very good heat and humidity runner. A lovely lady, came down every year, and we were just always tickled to have her down because she did her best, and as I said, always came out number 1. John Tracy, 1991 was an interesting year for us. We were not in a financial capacity, to really bring back the elite athlete fields that we had done in the past, but I wanted to have one athlete here that represented the past, and John had won the race before and said, Mac, I'll come for a plane fare from Dublin. So we brought him over, and he did it, and I think John ran 29, just did get under 30 minutes, but I always appreciate John doing that for us. And of course there is Judy St. Hilaire again winning her second race in a row. 1992, that's actually a start of the Fall Classic, which was at Truro Hospital, the halfway mark of the Crescent City Classic, and Truro sponsored that race for us for a number of years. They were great sponsors. They really enjoyed doing it. They enjoyed being part of that community, and it was a great event for their employees to participate in, and we had a great turnout. I don't remember how many thousands of people actually participated in the Fall Classic, but it was something that I was very proud that we were able to add to the Crescent City Classic portfolio. 1993, you can see on the left the wheelchairs. And I don't remember the year that we actually started with the wheelchair division. But talking about some fantastic athletes, I mean, these guys were unbelievable athletes. They were very competitive. They were fun-loving. I don't think I've ever seen anybody drink as much beer as these guys could drink and dance in their chairs. They were just a treat to have around. I never will forget the winner one year, and I don't remember his name, but we had a steep ramp going up to the award stage, and that was back in the days when we had to sink 4 telephone poles and put a stage up in between them, and it was a steep ramp, and so I'm going to push him up. I said, man, you're going to blow my R if you push me up that ramp. And he didn't need any help at all. He did a wheelie the whole way up. So, but they were a lot of fun, very competitive. And of course, they wheeled the course faster than the runners ran. So it was really enjoyable to have them, and the Paralyzed Veterans Association was very helpful in helping get them down here to compete in this event. 1994, we had really set this up thinking that we would be able to break the course record of 27:22, and this individual, William Segay, was just running tremendously. He was in great form. He was winning all of the races throughout Europe on the track. And so we asked William and some of his countrymen to come in. We had a rabbit for him, and we really thought, well, this is we're gonna break Mark Nino's record this year. He came in and he ran 27:24, 23:23 something, officially 27:24. And missed it. The insurance policy that we had for $25,000 that would have been paid to him had he broke the record was not, simply because it stated that it had to be less than 27:21 for it to pay out. So he won the race, did a great job, and certainly was well worth the regular money that we paid him to come in and run the race, and won it pretty easily. But it was interesting. I was riding in the press truck and I looked, and you could see he lost his concentration for about 2 or 3 seconds, and that's what cost him the race. If he had stayed on his pace, and I've still got around somewhere the splits, he was running negative splits all the way until he hit Audubon Park, and then he fell off of Nino's time by about 5 seconds, and that cost him his bonus. But great guy, great competitor. And on the left, that's me in the middle with 2 of the really great athletes that ever competed in the Crescent City Classic, Yobaz Ondiki and William Segay. And both of these guys broke the world record on the track. Yobaz Ondiki was the first person to actually go under 27 minutes on the track, and William came closely after him and broke his record. And of course, it continues to fall. On the right, you all recognize Joni Benoit. Joni ran an American record here, 31:44, and running second to Wendy in 1983. And of course, she was the 1984 Olympic marathon champion in the first women's marathon in Los Angeles. Just a lovely lady. She came twice, finished second twice. She was scheduled to come back several times, but a series of injuries kept her from being able to compete again, but she's still running. I see her every year. I go up to the Big 7 race in Davenport, Iowa, and Joan and Bill Rogers come up there every year, and she usually wins the Women's Masters division. Just a lovely lady, and just somebody that'll always be in the record books as the first winner for the women's marathon in the Olympics. And that was also 1995 was the year that we did not invite international athletes in the male division because it was the Track and Field National Association's national championship that was open only to men. And the first year, Keith Brantley won it in 95. And then in 96, Matt Gisto won it. Matt ran a good time. Matt finished right at 27:50 something, but he by far was the better of the two Americans that won either 95 or 96. And that was the last year that I actually was with the Crescent City Classic. I sold it shortly thereafter. And it was one heck of a ride. I really enjoyed it. It's just so much fun, and to go back and look at these pictures, and of course at the bottom, you know, it took them a few years to catch up with the men, but the Kenyan and Tanzanian runners have certainly dominated women's running since those early years. One of the things that I think I was really kind of very proud of, and I think it's a true statement, no one's ever called me on it, but in the running world at that time, most of the shorter distance races from the marathon on down were dominated by white athletes, white American athletes, certainly in this country. And I had made a contact with a guy out in El Paso, Texas, who was the track coach for the University of Texas El Paso, and they had won the NCAA championships with their great distance runners. They had Matthews Maswartu, Maisel Mukioki, Suleiman Nyambui. And I talked with Ted about sending a couple of them in, and he wound up sending us Gadama Shahanga, Michael Musioki, and Wilson Wagwood. Well, Michael proceeds to bust the world record twice in his first two races here and finishes second in an unbelievable time to Mark Nino in 1984. I think he ran 27:29 the year Mark ran 27:22, so that was a great race. And I said earlier, 4 of the people ran under the existing world record. But that was, I think, from that point on, the African athletes really started dominating, you know, the 5 and 10K distance races throughout the country. And here's another staple of the Crescent City Classic, still going strong. And those are the classics. They were a bunch of fun-loving guys. Really miss getting to see them. They would go by Children's Hospital every year and greet all the kids. So again, it's like the Blues Brothers. There's just so much to the Crescent City Classic that's not elite athletes, but it's people who enjoy running, who enjoy participating, who enjoy being part of this really vibrant and unusual community that we have. So that basically is a quick tour through my 18 years with the Crescent City Classic. If anybody's got any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
If you have a question, I'll come to you with the microphone. Somebody's got to have a question.
Is that a specific person on the logo, or is that just like a generic runner? That
was based on Michael Musioki. It was a photograph we had of Michael and a guy at the Times-Picayune. And I think that's the same logo that you all have modified a little bit. So yeah, and the artist at the Times-Picayune, the staff artist or graphic artist, was Tony O'Champagne, and Tony got that logo for us, and I thought it kind of was a great logo. It showed a lot of motion and that kind of thing, so we used it for a lot of time, and Eric's still using it today, so it's been pretty popular. You guys take care. We'll see you out there.
Matt, tell them about the bags of mail you used to receive. Now, I mean, everything's online now, and it all seems like people are waiting in these lines right here, but they've all pretty much on the internet signed up. Tell them about the stuff you used to have to do.
It was, you know, it was truly so different. It really was. You know, they would clip out the ad and clip off the entry form, fill it out, put it in an envelope, and send it in. And I really didn't think much about it the first year that the Picayune was involved, because I think the race went from 900,000 to like 3,000, so I didn't pick it up for a couple of weeks after they'd been running the ad. And I go down to the main post office to pick it up, and they've got these huge burlap bags filled with Crescent City Classic applications and $15 checks, and I had to make about 5, and I had to pull them, literally. I couldn't throw them over my shoulder. I had to pull them out, stuff them in the trunk of the car, put them in the back seat, and take them back, and then we'd have to clip them all off, roll them up, and make sure that we got everything done. But the funny thing about it, Eric, is we did not even, the first year or two, didn't even have a bank account in the name of the Crescent City Classic. You know, we stuck it all at New Orleans Running Center, which was Pidippides. And I finally went to the newspaper and talked to Charlie, and I said, Charlie, we've got to do something. We need to copyright this name, and to do that, we need a corporation, and I think the paper, you know, should have the corporation. And he said, well, let me go talk to Ashton and the board, and I'll call you. In about 2 days, he called me in, and he said, no, we're a newspaper. You go ahead and set it up however you want to. I said, okay, I'll take care of it. So that, after that, we did have a bank account, but we still had to go through all the clipping and the cutting and all of that, and that was a chore, but a fun one.
Yeah, Mac, you didn't say anything about the TV coverage.
Well, the TV coverage was absolutely fantastic, and it was WWL, and I don't remember exactly how this started, but, and Kirsten's kind of looking at me, my niece back there. There were a couple of guys, Richard Thomas and Richard Aiken, I believe, and that was back when the cable networks were just getting started. So they came to me and said, we think this would be great for WWL to have a race, and maybe we could even do it, you know, photograph it and do it live, present it over air live. And I said, well, sure, that would be great. So what it turned out to be that they would do an hour, 30-minute show for us every Sunday night. Did great production value on it and all of that. But the funny thing about it, and what I was looking at Kirsten, was that many, many years thereafter, I happened to marry the general manager's daughter of WWL Television, Mike Early's daughter, Kathleen. So everybody assumed that, oh, that's why you got the coverage, because of your marriage. And that wasn't the reason at all. If I had had to wait on him to get it, I can assure you it wouldn't have been free. He would have charged us for it. And I just want to ask y'all one question, since I know we got a lot of runners in here. And that is, who do you think's the best male runner that, in your opinion, ever ran the Crescent City Classic? I see you back there.
Stand up.
Hey.
This is Isaiah Coach, the fastest 5K runner ever to set foot on Louisiana soil.
Absolutely.
12:48.
Unbelievable.
12:48, and he's one of only 3 guys to run under 13 minutes indoors either.
Man, that is fantastic. That is, I mean, you talking about carrying on a great tradition down here. Wonderful. It's so glad. I mean, I just know everybody's tickled to death to have you down here. That's unbelievable. I just can't imagine it still. That's unbelievable, isn't it? Really is. Well, anyway, I'm going to answer my own question. We've had so many great runners here, and I think, to me, that one that stands out in my mind is Carlos Lopez. And Carlos was an Olympic gold medalist in the marathon distance, silver medalist in 10,000 meters, and won 3 World Cross Country Championships in addition to winning the Crescent City Classic. So I think just for his body of work, to me, Carlos Lopez is in a group by himself. But you could put Michael Musioki in there. You could certainly put William Segay, Yilbez Ondiki. They were just all great. They're just absolutely, like this young gentleman over here, the best in the world. So welcome so much.
Matt, we talked a little bit about non-marathon road races in the U.S. At the time you started the Classic, and then maybe all through the 80s, what were some of the sort of sister races around the nation that you consider to be, you know, you mentioned Peachtree, obviously that's a big one. What were some of the other races that you, and even today, consider, hey, they've stood the test of time, they're truly, you know, for lack of a better word, classics? Give us a few of your, maybe 3 or 4 races that maybe these guys could look at, you know, checking out too.
Right, you know, I always loved Cherry Blossom. I thought that was a great race. I enjoyed that in Washington, D.C. because that was always a beautiful time of year for that. The Bloomsday, I thought was a great run. Enjoyed racing that a lot, and I'll have to throw in the Big Seven, which was a few years older than ours. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot to do in Davenport, Iowa, but as far as galvanizing the community, that was their Mardi Gras Jazz Fest all rolled into one. That community moved and supported that race like none other that I've ever seen, so that was great. I was trying to think of some other 10Ks that really came to mind. I always enjoyed, but they never did live up, I don't think. At one time, they were getting some pretty good athletes over there, but they did not have the population base, and that was the Azalea Trail in Mobile, and they're still around. But, of course, I always mirrored ourselves with and competed against the Peachtree Road Race. And a funny thing, when I moved down here, I think that New Orleans was still considered the queen, the city of the South. And now I look back and I think, my Lord, Atlanta's got more people in it than we have in the whole state of Louisiana. So, you know, it probably never was a real fair comparison if you were going to base it on the numbers of participants. But we beat them when they put a cap on it, which was good. We had the bragging rights for a while. So.
Hey, Mac, it's Chuck.
Hey.
I got the results from the '84 race. And
Yeah.
You mentioned about that with Mark Nino.
Yeah, read those.
And that race there was, in my opinion, the greatest road race in the history of New Orleans. And there were 30 people at 30 minutes or under. The top 3 men broke the world record. An impressive field, if you take a look. The results are in this publication I have right here. But that was a day I thought the Crescent City Classic not just took the national stage, but took the world stage. It was just incredible when people, they couldn't believe the times. They thought there might have been something wrong with the course or something like that. Because they did come in and recertify the course after that, to remeasure the course a couple months later to make sure that we didn't have a unofficial world record, but they did certify it finally. And then, even though it had an asterisk because it's a point-to-point course, not a loop course, but it still stood up as a world record.
That is so true, and I want to tell you, Chuck, I think Craig finished 10th that year, and he comes up to me immediately after the race. He said, the course is short, it's short. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord. Well, Buddy Yeager, I'm sure you remember Buddy Yeager, who helped me a lot with the race. Buddy and I, and maybe George Owen or CG, I can't remember who the other one was, actually went out and measured the course. And to be perfectly honest, we really weren't that astute about course measurement. So there were some very, very nervous moments during that recertification, and fortunately, it was justified as a true 10K road race. So we lucked out on that one for sure.
More questions? Chuck's got some NOTC publications, if anybody's interested in looking at those and seeing some of the early results in the race. Some people were here yesterday asking about their own results in certain races, and you know, if you didn't finish in the top 500, you know, you really didn't know what any sort of exact time was. It's not like today where everybody's chipped and, you know, the race starts when you cross the starting line and it ends when you cross the finish line. But there was no way to measure all of that. And, you know, all these numbers, like Mac was saying, he went and picked them up at the post office, but we all stuffed packets. Oh, yeah. You know, just bunches and bunches of us just stuffed packets because you picked up your T-shirt when you finished the race. And those all had to be individually hand stuffed. So it's an amazing transition and a real testimony to the person who started the race and to the people now who continue this race. And you know, I applaud you all who have been involved, because it certainly did a lot for New Orleans and continues to do. We've got so many people running.
Well, it's just a joy for me to be able to be involved in it again. But I want to, you know, take my hat off to Eric and Ricky and Lane for doing a great job. I cannot tell you how I'm blown away with the number of people that are at this expo. It is just unreal, guys, unbelievable. So congratulations. And I know this is going to be a race that's going to go on for many, many more years and going to have a lot of more world-class athletes just like you've got now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And stick around because we've got folks from the